Thanks for inviting me. It's very exciting. I want to make sure you can hear me and see me. But and I, as a Center for Algonquin Culture founder, I've talked about Algonquin history, and some of that involves what's called settlement patterns, and there are theories about it. But these are backed up by not only our elders who have the oral tradition, and I'm talking about Canada across the country, but also people like Dr. Eugene Bosch, who was an anthropologist for the state of New York. He's kind of like a head anthropologist. And we've had conversations about this, and he's emphatic that there are these settlement patterns. And what I'm going to talk about is based somewhat on some colonial records and some well-known geographical details about Algonquin villages and tribes, but also I'll rely on the settlement patterns, which I think are very reliable. And in the valley here, under Algonquin times, there was no word for time. And I wrote a book about that some people know called No Word for Time. And we might look at portage routes today, some ones I'm going to show you on the map, and people will say, taking a boat and going over a ridge or a mountain from one watershed to another. And they'll say, well, that'll take all day. Who'd do that? Well, the answer is lots of people, because they had no other option other than to walk all day. And so if you need to go somewhere, you don't worry about time, especially when there is none. And you get there by any means necessary. And that phrase was shared with me by a friend of mine named David Eberly, who was until recently president of the Beacon Sloop Club and has been on every kind of boat you can imagine around the world. And he says, you do it when you're portaging, you use any means necessary because you really don't have a choice. So unless you turn around, the thing is you have to stay in shape. And it's understood about the any means necessary, but also if you carry the boat. If you lose your strength, then you would lose your ability, and then you would have to stay in one watershed, and that means you can't travel very far. But if if you can do the portage, and we're talking 1600s, you can go anywhere in North America free of charge without using fossil fuel. And I think that's something we need to work back towards. Remember Sacagawea too. This is not just for males. Sacagawea was a woman with a baby, and she did it across the country with Lewis and Clark. So that's the things I wanted to say right away. Since I did most of these maps in the past week, so some of the writing might look a little messy, but I'll read them out loud, and then I'll be donating these to the museum. And when I get a whole full large map done, I'll donate that, and of course the PowerPoint. And so what I'm hoping is that people who do portaging or can do it without hurting themselves, and I'm not sure I'm in that group, will try these portages that I've mapped out and see if they work. And they could be on several levels. They could be seasonal, where they work in the spring and the fall, and that's very common. Or they could work only, because of an incline. It might only work for really strong people. And there's some will work all the time for everybody. And so that's something I would like to know more about, because really I'm not, I'm a little old for that stuff, but would love to hear back, and then I'll revise whatever maps I have. So now I'm going to go and share this work a few minutes ago. Oh, I don't know. Hold on. So Donna, you're going to have to tell me if this works. Can you see the poster? Donna?
Yes.
Donna?
Yes, I can see.
Can you see
that.
the slide?
Yes.
Okay, good.
You're going to have to,
okay,
though.
So I'm going to blow it up.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I rely on you for that. Okay, so this tends to...
Perfect.
Oh, okay, great. Well, we're going to talk about all these different creeks because they all actually link together using portage routes. And that means carrying your boat over your head, and you should have a friend boat with you. But these were, as you see in the picture, birch bark canoes, and they were fairly light and somewhat small, so it's not so hard to carry them. But there's slats across, or gunnels, exception where you had a certain kind of pat that you could tie around that would be easily detached and then reattached. So you could hang it from the canoe over your head. And there are some still made that are only like 30 pounds, but it's like carrying your luggage. But the thing is that the old birch bark was strong and healthy and could be thin and kept the boat very light and buoyant. And the old birch bark, according to William Commanda, who was my teacher and also a great new builder, he says you can't get that birch bark anymore because acid rain killed it, and then climate change and all these things. And he says that type of old birch doesn't exist, but people can still make, and he made birch bark canoes that are light and buoyant, very buoyant, so the displacement would be 2 inches in some cases. Okay, so here's going right into talking about Grahamsville and Timing River. There is a short carrying place or portage between Chestnut Brook, which runs in one side into the Rondout watershed using and through the Neversink watershed, more directly, and Paradise Lake, and that drains into Neversink. And the natives use Chestnut Creek Trail on foot and by boat, and it was worth portaging your canoe to the Rondout because that hooks to Friday Mountain in the north, and then only 2 miles more to the Esopus watershed. I'm going to go into detail about that. But it also goes into the Neversink, which goes all the way down to Port Jervis. So you see these different spots. And here is what's now the Rondout watershed, Rondout, the reservoir, and here is the Neversink. And so there's this short road in between these two bodies of water, which have been changed by industry, of course. But this brook, Chestnut, goes only to here. And then there's this less than a mile of carrying your boat to get to the next thing, and the same thing over here. So I'll show you. This is my map. So you can see it clearly. I've sort of marked the portage spots that are, and again, theoretically, you'd have to actually go and do them, but I know this one. So in this map, you can see there's in Curry, which is next to Grahamsville, there is a portage spot for sure, documented. There's also a theoretical portage here over this ridge. Here's the Neversink arm, and here's Little Beaver Kill, and you see there's like a third of a mile between them right along this ridge. This yellow line represents a ridge between the watersheds, and that's where you need to portage. You need to carry your boat, and you go from this one into this one. Once you're into this Neversink part of it, then you can connect through another portage, which I don't know a name for, into the middle. This is the middle Mongop River, and that takes you to a different system. And once you're there, you have a portage here over to the East Mongop, and it goes on and on. Here's the Sheldrake portage, that's what I call it. And here's Woodbourne, and that's a portage, whatever you call it. There's a ridge here between the purple, which is Neversink territory, and the yellow, which is Wawarsink. And here you have when the Chestnut picks up, it's actually is confluent with the Red Creek or Red Brook, and so there's a portage from the end of that to the beginning of Botsford, and again there's a kind of a ridge there, and so that would be a logical portage. Once you're in Botsford, I didn't mark it, but it's only a few feet from the which is the another kill here, the Beer Kill, and then there's much further away this one. So most of the portages that I consider viable are between a half mile and 2 miles. Anything over that, I'm a little skeptical. Here you have this Stanton Road here, which goes from Swan Lake. This is Swan Lake. That's Swan Creek. And you have this actually a pathway today, which looks like it would have been an ideal portage route to get over to the Mongop from the Swan Lake. And then you're going the other way, there's a portage, it seems pretty obvious to go to. This is Horseshoe. So there's like this half a mile or less to Horseshoe. That connects to this over here, the Panther Creek in the east branch of the Calicoon. So I'm throwing a lot of information out here, but I have this map that I made to show you. And this is a listing in case you have trouble reading my writing, which I apologize for. This was done quickly. But this is the Wawarsing district is this whole area over here. And this is based not just on what we call Wawarsing today, which is very large, but also where the ridges are. So it would follow the ridge. And the Rondout Creek is in this Wawarsing district. And it only means where the water comes out. So this whole yellow area that I chose yellow just for contrast has all these different creeks in it, and it runs far to the east, right into Route 209, the Minisink Trail, which I do not show. So you have the yellow, which is the Warsing, and then the northern Neversink here, and then this would be the northern Mungap, and over here is the Calicoon. Now this yellow line here is not exactly natural, but when the natives sold it, when the Munsee sold this in 1746, and I am the finder, not the founder, but the finder of the treaty that was lost. And in this treaty, even Alf Evers didn't know about this because he misquoted it, but it shows the division between the Minisink sail at the bottom at the south and the Esopus Munsee part of it in the north. So this area that we're talking about, where the time in the valleys, is actually in this Neversink Valley, which goes off to the right here. But here, below South Fallsburg, is the line beneath which the Minisink Munsee sold. So I have to honor that because it's documented, even though they obviously didn't think in terms of a borderline that goes straight east-west. It cuts through these three valleys, actually, at least two of them. And so there's an upper Mongap and a lower Mongap. And the upper would be Esopus, the lower Minisink. And I thought a lot about it. I know this probably doesn't go back past 1746, but that's the best documented part. So we're going to honor that. Now up here at the very top is the Willow-Weemock Creek, and going from one side to the other, it goes into Fur Creek, and then there's a passage going to the Neversink here, and I have that on another map. I want to tell you a little bit. I mean, I want to tell stories, but I don't think we have time for all the stories. But Willow-Weemock is one of my favorites. I tell this story, and Joe Bruchac published a book based on this, the girl who made friends with the Thunder Beings. You can look it up, and you can get it out of the library. And she talks about a creature that I know to be Willow-Weemock, and that's been confirmed by the Bruchacs. And Willow-Weemock, Willow means head, and Weemock means big horns. And so it means he has big horns in his head, and he is an evil serpent. I mean, he's so bad. And so he's always tricking people. And the young girl falls in love with him, and she goes away with him. And then he takes her under the lake. There's a Willow-Weemock Lake near Willow-Weemock camp and village. And she can breathe underwater, but then when they come up, the Thunder Beings kill him with a lightning bolt, and she escapes and swims to the shore. And now she's either saved, or either perhaps she's a widow, she doesn't know. And then the Thunder Beings come down and offer her anything she wants because they've been trying to kill him for 100 years, and she helped. Anyway, it's a very bizarre story, but it's typical. And so I wanted to just mention at least one story. And this whole Willow-Weemock Creek is a whole valley in itself, and a whole district that goes over to Livingston Manor. So over here you have, again, Calicoon, which means wild turkey, by the way. And so I'll go on from here, but I listed here, so for your reading pleasure, you can see the names of all these different council fire districts. And I use that word, that's what we use in Canada for traditional tribes that are living now with traditional political systems. And of course, those were the same basically as what we're here, again, based on historical theory, but very reliable. And they would have used similar terms. Now that's English, of course, but when the Micmac or Mi'kmaq translate, that's the word they use, the council fire district. And the word T in a the syllable T in a name would indicate a council fire district. And so that means that it's not just one council fire, because every village has a council fire, but they're not districts. So you have a number of villages together, each with their own council fire, but then together they make a whole district, and there's a central council fire to that district, and they fill a valley. And the valley is from ridge to ridge. It's a watershed or a sub-watershed. The Neversink is a river, and so it has a major valley and a major watershed area. And the thing is that there were other villages, and I have yet to find all the evidence of where these various villages were and what they were called. But we know they were there, and we know they had their own little council fires and all their own little, rivers. Like, for example, the Wynkoop is very important, because if you're traveling along this road, which is now 55, and you want to take the Wynkoop, you carry your boat to the Wynkoop because it's really short, half mile or so, and then you go south of the Wynkoop. It's a shortcut to the Neversink River, and then you go south all the way, if you like, to Port Jervis. So that's some important points, I think. Okay, so now probable portage sites. I've mentioned these. Chestnut Creek is one of the greatest and most strategic portage sites between the Warwarsing Valley to the Wynkoop. So the Warwarsing, Chestnut Creek's, I believe, in the Warwarsing Valley, and Wynkoop is in the Neversink Valley. So the important thing about a portage, it allows you to change from one valley to another. And here, Route 55 seems to be the residual remnancy of that trail. And the critical point is at Curry, New York, which is near Ramsville. So that's in the upper right of the map. And then there's the Beerkill, which is in the Warsing, connecting to the Neversink via this wood-borne portage. That's not what they called it, but that's what I'm calling it, because that's where Woodbourne is. And that's an interesting town. And Route 52 is now the connecting remnancy of the portage route. Neversink River to East Mongap, that's a very interesting one, via the town and lake of Loch Sheldrake via Route 52. The fourth one is Swan Lake, which is a whole stretch of little lakes, to Middle Mongap. And that, I believe, was the Stanton Road, which is a little pathway. And I'd love to go out and visit Stanton Road. I think it's a dirt road. But these brooks are seasonal, so you may or may not need Stanton Road. 5 is Swan Lake, which connects from Swan Brook, and that connects the Mongap Valley there with Swan to the east branch of the Calicoon to the west via 52, and also you can use Horseshoe Creek to make it even shorter. 6 is Neversink, which is now a reservoir, but it was a river, to the Little Beaverkill, which is the upper center part of the map, via Smith Road. Now, whether Smith Road was actually exactly following the portage route, I don't know, but it looks really natural. It looks like it fits the terrain, and so that's what I can go by. But if it wasn't exact, it was approximate. Now, the 7th one is, of course, Willie Weemock Creek to the Willie Weemock Town, to Furbrook to Neversink River, and I have a separate map to show you that. Okay, so this is interesting, and this is, I'll read this because this was provided to me several years ago by Time in the Valleys, and I think it was Donna. To the west of the upper reservoir is one of the secondary tributaries, Chestnut Creek, which runs through the town of Grahamsville from headwaters to the border of Catskill Park. A quarter mile to the south, the source of Chestnut and the Rondout watershed is Lake Paradise, and the source of Wynkoop Creek, which is in the Neversink watershed. Benton Hollow Road follows the short portage route today between the two. From there, Route 55, extended as 55A, follows the Chestnut eastward to the Rondout, and this seems to be the only available portage route across the divide between the upper Rondout and Neversink watershed areas, and used as a footpath whenever water levels were low, and as a canoe route when the water was high. Regardless, water route or land route, it was a major travel corridor. And according to local histories, I think this is from the Slater records, that route, and particularly Chestnut Creek, was used by Native Americans to reach the Minisink Trail, which is now 209, again approximate, when migrating westward through various removals, and was also used during the Revolutionary War to march prisoners out of the area on foot following the Battle of Chestnut Creek. Okay, Slater Farm. The Slater Farm was the site of a Native American settlement and many hunting camps, and numerous boxes of native projectile points have been collected from the site. As I'm sure a lot of sites can claim that. Elise Humbeck, who was connected to the Slater farm, wrote a letter to Time in the Valley Museum on February 28, 2010. You can look it up. That her father-in-law's grandfather saw Native Americans traveling back and forth on the trail located between the Rondout and 55A. So that'd be the Rondout Reservoir today, not then. Also 55. Quote, they were always friendly and would wave as they passed. Well, that's really good to know. It tells you a lot, actually. This patch of road and the river is the eastern approach to the quarter-mile dry portage route mentioned above. In a later generation of her family was a Deard Smith, an Indian scout married to a full-blooded Seneca named Mim, close friends with the famous Tunis. The local native that Tunis Lake was named after, also part of Route 28, the 28-based portage route through the area. Now, I've been many times to Tunis Lake. I've actually helped conduct ceremony there. And Tunis was, I believe, a Mohican who got into a lot of trouble because he helped the white people. And that didn't go over well with some of the tribe. And so he kind of lived an isolated life after that. That's the story. But apparently he lived close to the foxes and bears and rabbits and fished a lot. And there's a Tunis Lake. And so that seems to be a native name. But also there's a Dutch version. So I have to keep. Okay. Beaver Dam Pond is a source of what I would call a tertiary stream, one, that was smaller, that runs into Chestnut Creek. Time in the Valley Museum is located at the confluence of Beaver Dam Pond and Chestnut Creek. And they have native artifacts which are found along the Minisink Trail. Now, the Minisink Trail doesn't exactly show up on my map. It's the next map you're going to see has it in the lower corner. One could backtrack up the Neversink past Wynkoop and get all the way to Slide Mountain and find the headwaters, the Esopus, and that returns you to Kingston. So the Delaware River itself connects the Neversink and Bashakill Creeks to the south, but not as a shortcut. The idea of a portage is generally a shortcut. There's one at Silver Lake. And so this was my conversation in 2022 with Donna Steffens, February 15th. And I'm going to, okay, so here's another map. This is a map to the east. And this is the one where, okay, so this is the upper right. There's so much going on around Shandaken, and especially Panther Mountain, which was called Mamindaasi, which means it's a meteor passing across the sky, or a panther literally passing across the sky. You've heard of Tecumseh. His name means the same thing in Shawnee. So here are some council fire districts for you. There's the Shandaken, a very large council fire district, and Shindaki means the land of evergreens or hemlocks. And it's in the Warner-Wonkong larger district, or head district of the Esopus Commonwealth, and some say Confederacy. But on the right side of the map, in the pink or red area, is the Esopus Warner-Wonkong Commonwealth, and here it's the Shandaken as a subgroup. Now, Papaconk is the east branch of the Delaware, and you can see this. I'll show you. This is the yellow again, being the ridge, and that's the Papaconk. And the Papaconk was where the Esopus Munsee moved to in the 1740s, the grandchildren of Mama Nucleus of Kingston. And they sold some of that land and became the Western Munsee capital. Papaconk means, and it's very funny because you think of these refugees going to this river, Papaconk means it wanders lost here and there among the mountains. That's all, all in Papaconk. And it also refers to a plant which is like sweet flag. And yet I have not yet found solid evidence that they had sweet flag, but they had to, because they're calling it a play on words. And I always say, if it doesn't have two meanings, it's not Algonquin, and this is the case. Papaconk wandered lost, like the river, the east branch of the Delaware, wandered lost among the mountains, just like the people were exiled, very sad and poetic. So then it became the Western Muncie capital, Western Esopus Muncie. Now 3 is Beaver Creek Valley, part of the Esopus territory. And then there's Micmac, which I mentioned in the lower left, part of Western Esopus, probably had its own council fire district. I don't have details yet, but there are several villages there. Now 5, Neversink Nation. Again, the purple down here. There's this western branch and the eastern branch. They're parallel. And so bottom right here is the corner of the, well, here's Rondout Creek. That's Wawarsing down here. Okay, now here's probable portage routes here. Route 42 from Poughkeepsie Lake. Here's Poughkeepsie Lake. That's where the Rondout comes in. And there's a possible long portage against 42 all the way out to the main road, which is 28, which I called the Pacton Trail based on Foltz's maps from the Revolutionary War. And George Washington used those maps, and it actually was pretty passable. Route 42 from there, Poughkeepsie Lake, an important spot, to Pacton Trail, which here is 28A. Now 2 is Stony Creek Portage from the Esopus, and here's Stony Creek, where the stone, the Devil's Tombstone is right here. We've been there. That's been there according to Alf Evers from before the Dutch. And this portage goes to Pine Orchard. We know that because of the tragic story of Chief Shandaken, who came all the way through here after his daughter was killed. Whole nother story. And he goes down Pacton Trail, and he goes to then apparently built Shandaken for Fort Shandaken here, which was then taken over by the whites during the Revolution. And then this is 214 today, remnancy of the path, and it goes through the Clove. Now 3 is Bushnell Bill Portage, which I'm very familiar with here, over here. And that's Route 42, and it goes to Westkill Creek. Let me show you maps of that. And it goes to the Schoharie Valley via Westkill, and that's Mohawk. And also the Seneca used it. Now, part 3 here, the third one on the list, is the Gowiensink Portage, that you know as High Mount when you crossed over the mountain in 28, across this peak of High Mount. You go where there are no more streams. You pass the Birch, and then there's nothing. And then you cross over into the Delaware Valley, and there's Emery Brook, and then there's several brooks. There's Dry Brook, which is a very interesting place, and Michael knows that. And it goes into the Delaware here. So this is interesting because you go up 42, it's fairly steep up to Bushnellville Creek, and then go over to Westkill. And it's pretty challenging, but we know for sure, it's documented, that this was a Mohawk portage. And also, it was for the Seneca, who were followers of Chief Handsome Lake, who wrote the Gospel of Handsome Lake, and they actually spread it as a kind of religion on these portages. And I was told by the highest authorities that, and I actually met a Seneca person who still followed the Gospel of Handsome Lake and would meet. Hope you can still hear me here. Okay. So Oren Lyons introduced me to followers of this path, and it peaked in 1813. That's in popularity. They used these routes, and Gowiensink is based on his teachings. Gawio, as some of you know, means universal harmony in Seneca, and Sink means place. So there's this portage between the two. Now, next portage is between Dry Brook, which is part of the Papacont area. Here's Dry Brook. And it isn't dry, as Michael Kudish pointed out to me. I looked at it, and it's seasonal, I would say. But then you have a portage between Dry Brook to Beaver Creek, which is sort of a separate valley of its own. And I don't know of any villages. And they're near Balsam Lake. And then 5 would be Willie Weemock to West Branch, Neversink, via Basili Road. Now here's Basili Road. I don't know the pronunciation, but Basili Road is there. And it follows the contours of the land going over this ridge from Willie Weemock over to West Beaver. And it looks like a really, it's a really humdinger of a portage route. Goes over the ridge, and also bends to the ridge. You know, if you're going over a ridge, sometimes you want to take an angle so it's not so brutal, and it actually does that correctly. This is a blow-up of one of the more remarkable stretches of the Portage route you now call 28. You know, these new names are so numerical. This path connects Birch, Emory, East Branch, Delaware, Dry Brush, Platte, Bryant's, the Little Delaware, Falls Creek, Uladit, and the Susquehanna to the town of Oneonta, which is a Shawnee and Mohawk name mix. But you can do it in a day's walk. So it's all these short little pieces of spaghetti all tied together here. And so this is a map that I made, and I actually gave a workshop, kind of a field trip. I took people by car and then going out and looking at these various streams, and it was really fun. Okay, so there's a map that I made showing 28 in all its glory, and this was picked up by the Queen's Museum in New York and displayed for about a half a year in a very, very large format, and everybody got very excited. So there's so much here, I don't go into it all, but you see, this is paths that were used during the Revolution. This is a theoretical part of where 28 is now. This really was just probably a mountain trail, Hurley Ridge. But here's 213, which is really where following the Esopus. 209, the Mason Trail is actually over here. But this became to me the Papaconk, because Papaconk is here, and that was the destination. And then 28 goes through this spaghetti here, because there is tying together all these little tiny rivers over to here in the Susquehanna. Now you understand the colonies are over here, and on the other side of the Susquehanna, you were supposed to be free and clear of any trouble with white people. And of course, that only worked until Butler and Sullivan came by and burned everything down, which you can read about in Barbara Mann's book called George Washington, War with the Native Americans. And not a pretty picture, but I don't have any. Otherwise, the George Washington was very friendly to some allies who were Native, called them brethren. So here's a big blow up of that tricky spot between there's the Willie Weemont Creek going up here to the north and taking on Fur. It's called Fur. And here's Long Pond connecting Willie Weemont down here to the Beaver Kill. And the Round Pond, which is over here, connects the Beaver Kill to the West Branch of the Neversink. So you can travel all these places, you know where you're going. And what's remarkable to me is when you're on the ground, you can't see most of this. Like you don't have maps like this, but it's all in your mind, and you know where to go by hand. This probably handed it down by your father or uncle, your mother's brother. Okay, here's Peakamoose Mountain, and this is an amazing spot. This topo map shows the headwaters of Rondout Creek at the bottom, which is down here. The Neversink River center left over here, and Wittenberg over here, and the West Neversink towards the upper left over here, West Neversink, and coming in from the upper right is the Esopus Creek. And all connected by marked trails today. Moonhaw Road here is in here somewhere, Moonhaw Road, up here. And it's that means groundhog, which is another Algonquin name for which is woodchuck, is an Algonquin word for the groundhog. But here it's called Moonhaw, which is also an Algonquin word. And just to the north, above the map here, is Panther Mountain, which I mentioned. Mamindaasi was the Munsee name, showing they understood it was created by a meteor. Panther cutting across the sky. So this topo map shows a short distance between the Neversink River on the left and here on the left, and the Wittenberg Creek on the right. And so all you have to do is climb over this little ridge here. And probably better to go north and take the Burroughs Range because it's a natural trail. Now, this is a map that I helped make with the Rondout Alliance Conservancy. And so what I did was to add in, can you, everything's going well, right? Okay, so these are words that I had inserted. This is Coxingkill, is a cock, Sink. And then here is Pampaleu is the original name for the Purple Bush Creek. And Rondout was called Kahak Sink here. And you also have one of my favorites here is Marmosasing here, or Mamosasing was the original word for the Mombakas. So they were nice enough to add in these names to honor Native Americans, but there were many more Native names about places in particular, not just rivers. So that hasn't happened yet. So this is another map I made of this central area, and this shows the really 209 is here. The Mini Sink Trail, which is approximated by 209, goes to Basher Kill, and Queen Basha really means she bakes bread, or she's either she bakes bread, and it also means, double meaning, that she is a Kitsanika, or a kind of a medicine woman chief. So here you have the Pine Kill, and that is go into that later. But this whole orangey section is the Mamakating district, which was one of the 5 recognized Esopus districts. And it means where we gather together under the pines by the fire. It's a really terrific name. And then up here, that goes up to here, and then you have this huge Wawarsing territory. So this shows, number 1, you see the Wallkill Valley is across this bridge. You notice there's no portages because it's way too steep. But there's a whole huge council fire district of the Wallkill, which was called Magonk, by the way. And then 2 is you have the Mamakating Council Fire District, one of the 5 mentions in the great treaties of the patents of the region. 3 is the Warna Wongkong, which is this way upper right, and that's the head district of the Esopus. And then 4 is the Northern Neversink. Again, that's this purple area, and there's it's divided north and south because of the treaty. You don't know how long ago that was true. Northern 1746. The Southern Neversink, which is down here also in purple, but owned by the Minisink and sold by them in the same treaty. Now 6 is the Southern Mongap. This is green. There's Monticello here, which is dry as a bone, by the way. And Southern, and they had the Minisink sold that. Now above that is the Northern Mongap, because it was sold by the Esopus. We assumed that they had the right to do that. And there's also over here this green. This is the, this is all Mongap over here, north and south. So here's the probable Portage sites. Here's the lower here between Pine Kill Lake and Wolf Lake. This is actually one of my favorites. So I think it's one of the more reliable, theoretical, but very, very likely. You have the Neversink River here, and you have these 2 short kind of pathways to the edge of Wolf Lake. And then you would sail across Wolf Lake or paddle, and then there's another very short portage to Pine Kill Lake. And then from there, you can go either this way or that way. That seems like a very reliable construct. Okay, now 2 is lower right, Willsey Creek, Neversink River via Rock Hill. So here is Rock Hill here. So that's part of a kind of a ridge here. And you see the dotted red line, which is my indication of the portage route. And it connects you from the Neversink over to Willsey, connects you over to this Mamakating system. And then 52 is the Werenek Trail cutting across. And the Werenek Trail goes connecting all these important sites. This is 52. And it goes all the way to Atlantic, goes through Beacon, and it's all native history all the way. And I call it the Werenek Trail, and I think that's the only really reliable name because it goes through the Werenek territory and connects all their major spots, and then continues through Stamps Point, by the way, up the mountain and then back down. The lower left is Bushkill of the Neversink Valley, the Bushkill here, and then you have a portage to the east branch of the Mongap, and there's Black Creek Portage here, connecting 48, Route 48, over to this system. Now 6 is the upper left, that's Swan Lake way up here to West Mongap through here, and I mentioned that. And here's 55 if you need it, but also seasonal streams. And there's a little red line here for Stanton. It's just a little pathway, but it's perfect location for a portage. And this is a blow up of my map of, again, this would have been sold by the Minisink Muncie in 1746. And it's the Coshecton Council Fire District. And Coshecton is in the corner. But it's very interesting. And you have a possible portage. This is Lemons Brook, and here is 10 Mile River. And this part of 17B makes a decent portage of about 2 miles. It's not one of the most exciting, but it's there. So we have, let me show you, here's another portage here, but these are the Lower Mongap and Coshecton. Okay, so here's the map. So here's the Council Fire Districts here. The far right, we have the Neversink in purple. Not much action there. 2, upper right is the corner of the northern Neversink region, sold by the Esopus. Number 3, top center, northern Mongap. 4, southern Mongap down here, which is Minisink, their Council Fire District. 5 is the Coshecton, this whole area here, very large area, Coshecton, which is seems to have been Minisink. And then above that is the Calican Valley Council Fire District, which is sold by the Esopus. Now this is the same map. Portage sites, long portage between Halfway Brook and Mongap, in the Mongap Valley between 43. And the Mongap Valley is up here. And then there's 43. And then so, and let's see that. Oh, here. There's Portage here. And here is White Lake Brook. And here's Hemp Meadow. These are all lesser streams. And here's Halfway Brook. So you see there's a natural 55, which is the same route that connects Grahamsville. It connects many other rivers as it goes. 55 is almost built for that. As a matter of fact, every trail has its personality, and this one seems to be connected river. So here you have this Hemp Meadow connected to Halfway Brook via 55. Okay, now long portage between Halfway Brook and Hemp Meadow, as I mentioned, and then unmarked portage between Lebanon Lake and Mongap Lake. Now here's Lebanon, hard to read, I'm sorry, the pen leaked, but here's Lebanon, and it connects to the Mongap Valley here, and there was probably a portage, but I didn't mark it. Now, by the way, I've talked about the Coshecton crossing, and I have a 1-hour presentation just on this one spot, and so that's pretty dramatic. This is a carving of a black Labrador's head, and there's lore about the black Labrador guarding the people crossing the Delaware River because it's dangerous. So at Coshecton, there's this black lab carved with stone tools. It's low on the west bank of the Delaware and the Pennsylvania side. His retriever nose points to the best spot to cross, and that's, you can tell you that yourself. However, it is apparent that if he's underwater, the depth is too high, and you are likely to end up underwater too. So I say, you know, if you can't see him and he can't see you, you're on your own, and good luck. And people do die there every year because they don't know that. So now some people will know. Further up the Esopus and near Winnisook, one would have been more likely to find a stepstone crossing for summer travel. But this is based on an old Lenape, if you will, Delaware story about the dogs. When you die and you go to the spirit world, you have to cross the famous bridge of rolling logs, and the dogs will help you if you've been good to dogs through your life. But if you've been kicking dogs through your life, good luck, because these dogs will pull you over into the brink. And here's such a dog. Okay, so here's my map of Callicoon. And again, you look at the bottom here, there's Damascus on the other side, which is where the dog is, the dog crossing. But Damascus doesn't have to do with the Bible, sorry to tell you, but it means a small beaver, like Tamaqua, plus us or kush for small. And that really means muskrat. And they have a lot of them. And here's the dog crossing. But here, right across, is Dog Mountain. And it's all fitting together, doesn't it? And so this is the map. You see there's Portages, and this whole Callicoon Fire District is like an upside down clamshell. You see, it's a round valley just riddled with all kinds of interconnecting Callicoon streams. So here's some of the districts. Okay, one, you have the southern Mongat, which I didn't color, and northern. Two is well, three, we'll go to Willie Weemock up here in brown. And four is the Callicoon Wild Turkey. And that was also sold by the Munsee, but there were Mohawks and Mini-Sinks involved. Five, Coshecton, Mini-Sink, the whole thing. And then the dog crossing. Okay, so here's some portage spots. First of all, Lemons Creek is here. This is Lemons Creek. It has its own sub-valley here, and connecting by this portage over that ridge to the Callicoon here. The east branch is right here, and then via Briscoe, which is a pathway, and then two is Panther Brook, not related to Maminadasi, but we don't know. But that's Panther Brook is here. Shouldn't have. Oh, Panther Brook is up here, and here's the portage to the Callicoon, right there. And then Young Road is the remnant sea today, and it's not exact. It's pretty close. East Branch Callicoon to Hankins Creek via Peters Road. This one my last discovery. This was I found some historical documents online to say that the people who sold Callicoon then decided to sell the Hankins Creek area soon afterwards, and the same people. So we're talking about the same group of people that had administered this other side of this ridge. And so this is connected by this little road here, Peters Road, again, a remnant sea, very small pathway today, where they must have carried their canoes between these two. So those are some of those. And so here you have, again, the Lemons Creek portage here. The Panther Rock portage is up here. That's an interesting one. This is Panther Brook, and this is Panther Rock, and this is a portage to the Callicoon. So this is another map. This one is a little theoretical, but this is a difficult area. This is the Papakong area where the Esopus Munsee went west and made their western capital. And this I call Plattekill Council Fire District because the Plattekill Creek is the main waterway creating some of these valleys. But then here you have part of 28 connecting Plattekill and Bryant and Tremper's Kill. Tremper was a steamboat captain in the Hudson River, made lots of money and bought a lot of this land. And here you have an interesting thing. This is called Farmer's Hill. And it's literally part of this little ridge that creates the separation between the waters and the need for a portage. So it's very illustrative. And then, so this blue area, and here includes Dry Brook, which you'll see in a minute, really goes somewhere, but it's very dry. But it's seasonal probably. So this is all like Margaretville was this capital of the Esopus Munsee. And here is this separate, the Pacton Valley. And I believe it is a valley, and I know Michael probably researched that, but it goes down to the Pacton village. I'll show you one of Michael's maps. But then you have a ridge here where you see there's no rivers along this, and you have to take this, what I would call the Tunis Lake portage here. And there's Bovina Road going along the Little Delaware, which is a very well-used portage. This is actually the Oneonta Trail along the Little Delaware, going all the way out to the Susquehanna. Now here is the Mohawkinsink branch of the Delaware, that blue line. And this is also called the Lamasipos in Delaware, which was derived from Namasipos, which means the river of fish. And I would call this Lamasipos Council Fire District. And across this Lamasipo is the neutral territory leading to the Mohawk territory. So the Council Fire Districts that I mentioned, I think I've been through them all, but this is more theoretical in this area, and I'm researching that and reading Rumet and other scholars and understand the complexity of this region. Because there was some kind of, maybe you'd say competition. So I think that I've explained most of this. So the portage spots include the short Y between the branches at, let's say at Margaretville, right there. Here, this is right there. There's a possible one. I don't know for sure. But then there's one at Farmers Hill that I mentioned right here. And again, I took some people up there and look at it. Tremper and that's pretty much it. So this is Michael Kudish's map showing you that this, we call it Molshalu, means the land cleared by fire. But here's the Poughkeepsie village. Like I said, I don't have a lot of villages, but this one we can be sure, but it's under the reservoir. So Michael Kudish made these. He's the author of the Catskill Forest, A History, which I have. And it shows Native American controlled burning areas. And the green areas are these controlled areas. And chestnut and oak were some of those burned, which were fire plants, which were then attracted to deer. Now, this is the Hardenberg patent map, which very few people have seen, but the coloring is as interpreted by a man named Van Valkenburg, and I didn't know him. I might have met him, but I knew his daughter very well. And Alf Evers and myself have reconstructed this map. So this is the mini sink area in pink, and around it is the pale yellow. Excuse me, I'm going to correct that. The pink area, salmon colored area, is the Esopus Muncie. And wrapping around it is the mini sink Muncie, little drain. But then you have this Mamasipus River here. So that's where I derived some of the names and distinctions. So this is a map I made a long time ago and still stick to it. And you have this Shawnee and mini sink up here after 1692. And this is all Algonquin here. And here's the Susquehanna Trail, which you call 23. This is the mini sink territory. And here's the Esopus Muncie territory. So that's a lot of where some of these divisions come from, based on these maps. But here you have, let's say, at the mountain. And here's the blow up. So the Shawnee moved in to help protect this little spot here. This mile or so here is all portage between Bear Creek, which goes to Schoharie, and the west branch of the Delaware. Now, Louis Santa Mountain is 3,214 feet high, but associated with the little people, because Utse in the Takabachi dialect of Shawnee means the little people, the Misingwe. It is near the headwaters of the Delaware and on the border between Algonquin and Iroquois territory after 1300. And the Lenape, or the Muncie, gave this to the Shawnee to protect and to guard over. And so the Shawnee stayed, and then I believe they moved out on Route 23 to Oneonta, which the One prefix is Mohawk. The Onta is a Shawnee word for a town. And here's the big picture. It's overwhelming. Don't even look at it. You might get boggled. But this is all this Muncie territory all over down in New Jersey. Raritan River doesn't even cover it all. Just 100,000 I don't know, 100,000 square miles, 10,000 square miles. So there's the Hudson, there's the Susquehanna, and everything in between is some sort of Muncie of some kind. So you can look at that on the film. And here's putting all those maps together, which I know you were hoping I would do. So this is a rough of putting these different sections together to see how the big picture. You see this whole we have this whole huge Neversink Valley here. And by the way, we know that the Mohawks went all the way from over here. Let me show you this. So the Mohawk trading route, which is really fantastic. It shows you that people really did anything they had to do to get there. This is the proof. So you have, this is the Bushnellville, a very tall ridge, very difficult. On the other side, of course, is Schoharie. So the Mohawks would go through here, and then go around here, and then go into the Neversink Valley here, and they flew all the way down the Neversink, all the way to Port Jervis, and set up a trading post. And that trading post was called the Mohawkinsink Trading Post. And there you go. It's the place of the Mohawks. So it proves my point, I hope, that the Portagers would get there by any means necessary. And I think that's a pretty dramatic example. And there's, of course, the big picture. And then no portages marked, but they were everywhere. And of course, Portage, Wisconsin was the portage between two very major rivers, which actually connected the whole continent. And West Chicago, there was a very seasonal portage, which sometimes would become a river. And that was where Route 66 started of, movie and rock and roll fame, going all the way to Santa Fe and beyond. So that's my